Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Knights of the Alternate Table. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about what if the US won the Korean War? Well, the South and the UN. So, yes, let's get into it. I'm going really modern now, and then my next two series planned, are going to be really ancient. So, hope you guys like the jumping through ships instead of World War II and World War I. So, have a good one. 1950, and the map looks like this, with China being in all of its glory, Japan, and the Soviet Union, as well as Mongolia. With the Koreas divided in two, soon North Korea would try and invade to unite both of them into one empire, one communist empire. The US, after the Truman Doctrine, would not have that. A couple months later, the map looks like this, with the North Korean invasion of the South being absolutely devastating, them only holding a few ports, looking to surrender. They appeal to the UN for help. The UN accepts and begins to create an army to try and push back the North Koreans. This would be seen as an act of aggression through all communism, though the US would have to do some careful politics. The first step is not hiring Douglas MacArthur. Let him be busy in Japan. By hiring a different general who didn't hate communism as much, this would ease the Chinese nerves, or the Soviet nerves, more importantly, China. This would make it so that China was unlikely to join the war, unlike in our timeline. With the UN arriving, they start their expansion. First, slow, due to the inexperience of this new general they hired, as Douglas MacArthur was great in making up different landing points. But without him, they wouldn't. Though, it would be better because China would not get involved in the war. South Korea would now almost be fully liberated. Though not all the way, the soldiers would get more and more expired, and the American people would see that they can defeat communists. This would send a huge rise in patriotism, and with more and more Americans signing up, and British and more NATO members signing up, this would lead to an easy breakthrough soon. Now almost making it to the original border, this would lead to North Korea starting to fear and beg China for help, trying to convince them that what if the US just keeps on moving in? Though with political Matthew, this would not work. So, without that happening, they would choose to decide to stay out of the war, and North Korea would look for a peace deal. The UN would deny and would continue invading, this time managing to cross over the original border, which would happen greatly. And now, coming up the Korean Peninsula more and more, China would look more and more worried. With the full UN force starting to break through, China would start militarizing and preparing its people for war. Now, with the US and the UN forces almost moving completely up the peninsula, this would lead to a lot of worrying and panicking in China, who would start sending forces into North Korea, though not declaring war yet. The US would decide to try and assure China by making promises such as not putting tariffs and opening up more trade regulations with them. So, USA, you're not gonna invade me? No, that's why we got rid of MacArthur. So, you promise? Yes, don't worry, it'll be completely fine. You don't have to worry about a thing. Well, you are destroying my communist ally. But they would have joined Russia as their Russian puppet, and you guys just broke up. Fair, I'll allow it. With the North Koreans knowing that they're not going to be able to get help, they would look to try and surrender. They would start trying to flee to Russia, though the UN would send a force splitting the Korean forces in two. The ones in the littoral panhandle would start running into Soviet Russia, who would accept them gladly and put them into Soviet military already and try to engulf them in the wider Soviet Union. And with that, Korea would be unified. With Japan now also serving as a bottleneck, they would start closing off Asia and would start making an anti-communist blockade to try and surround Asia in Western allies and democratic capitalist nations. China, having trade deals, wouldn't worry, but Russia would start to sweat. 1960 and Vietnam is happening. Though this map doesn't show the war yet, the US would see that another Asian nation is going to start invading with communism. There would not be a hippie movement in this time, as they would be assured that the US can get this done off of the victory of the Korean Wars and other minor wars. This would lead to a spark in patriotism, and volunteers would start. With the US now thinking they can win the war, they would start their invasion. They would be even more brutal and hardline than in our timeline, as with mostly a success, more and more people would join and more presidents would get more radical and militarily. They would start invading North Vietnam, and this would begin the Vietnam War. Even though the US was making more progress in our timeline, they would start getting slowed down by Vietnam forces using the Ho Chi Minh Trail. This would start to outrage the public much as in our timeline, but the US, knowing that they can get it done with the backing of China, who would not interfere, would look to start invading Laos and Cambodia, both communist nations who were helping Vietnam. Operation Gold Star would begin, and more troops would smash into Cambodia and Laos, who would not be expecting this, as they thought that the Americans wouldn't risk going to war with more nations. The public would love this, seeing progress and not losing as much casualties because of this unexpected warfare would lead to the American people deciding this was victory in their hearts. With the new Indochina Confederation alliance happening and almost getting cut in two, Cambodia and Laos would both look to surrender, with Vietnam fighting on and teaching them guerrilla warfare. The US forces would start coming to a standstill, though this wouldn't affect them, as they would continue pushing on and using napalm more and more, and starting to hunt down those who they suspect. Are you joking, America? You just start invading random communist countries in my sphere of influence? What would you do if I invaded Belize or somewhere like that? Well, I would declare war on you. But what are you doing here? Well, you see, how about we make a non-alliance pact and you can get the northern half? Fine, deal. I'm upset about this, but at least communists have somewhere to flee to and I'm getting more land about this. Okay, but you can't declare war on NATO for at least another 50 years. Fine. Now, I need you to stop interfering with my affairs. And with that, the Democratic Indochina Confederation would be formed, with northern Vietnam and Laos being annexed by China, as they would be absorbed into the Greater Chinese State. This would lead to millions of guerrilla fighters starting to come in from China, though a lot of them would be pulled out or arrested by the Chinese government to try and stop a conflict with the UN. Hey guys, I hope you liked that video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you next time. So yeah, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I've been working really hard on it and trying to do a new style. So hope you guys like. Make sure to subscribe and have a good one. Goodbye. Wow, what a great video. On our right is a video YouTube thinks you would like, and on your left is a video that I just uploaded. So why not like and subscribe? I hope you guys like the series. I would suggest clicking the left one, but you don't have to do what I say. Just kidding, you do. I am your supreme overlord.